Here we go. Hi, welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings video cast and podcast for the week ending October 11th, 2020. This is episode 380, folks, where we talk about all things smart building controls and HVAC controls. We talk to the most interesting people in the most interesting ways because we have the most interesting co-hosts in the industry. Your co-host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers, the controls man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, we're not in Pittsburgh anymore. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Eric. I apologize for the ambience. I got a lot of background noise here. We started out this morning. It was early, dark 30, and there was nobody here. I was by myself, but now
they heard you were in the lobby, and they all came down, huh?
Everybody's here. I got a family to my right that the mom's doing her best to keep everybody in check. But yeah, Eric. 380 episodes. I'm always just amazed by the fact that we've kept it together that long. In this day and age of COVID-19, and a lot of things are disappearing slowly but surely. The atrophication of a lot of ceremonies and old school stuff it's disappearing because it's just no longer feasible. All the shows got delayed, canceled, or redated, and so it's always fun to have this weekly rendezvous and share what's going on in the industry, because our industry is alive. We're transforming. We've got torches of change being handed to each organization's dealing with all these things, and that leads us to our guest today. This morning is going to be Ken Sinclair, and we've got a great stuff to talk about there, because Ken does a great job of bird dog and all the things going on in the world, actually, because he's out of Canada, right. But he's dealing with people from all over the world, all the European countries, Finland, Scotland, Scandinavia. So it's a lot of fun to hear what Ken's got to say. But how are you doing down in Atlanta?
Let's bring him on. I tell you what, I got him in the guest room right now. Let's bring him on. Let's get this party started, so to speak.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'd love to, Eric. We got Ken Sinclair, owner-editor of AutomatedBuildings.com, and Ken's getting ready to hit a milestone. He's going to have 20,000 subscribers to Automated Buildings, which is quite an impressive, milestone in our industry, because it's so esoteric. We don't have many lawyers or doctors in our group, but we sure do have a lot of people involved in buildings: facility managers, engineers, integrators, distributors, contractors. So, congratulations, Ken, and welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you very much. I better clarify that right away. It's there's not really subscribers to Automated Buildings, but they are in fact part of the Automated Building LinkedIn group, and it certainly is a diverse global bunch of folks. And I'm actually pretty proud of all the people that are in there. When you do a search for Johnson Siemens, you come up with sometimes thousands of people, which is kind of interesting. And then it's also interesting to see the breakdown of the upstart companies, and also the moving in of the IT. So I'm kind of proud of it, but it's not exactly Automated Building subscription. It is it's basically being all handled by LinkedIn.
Well, seriously, that's what I love about Ken, Eric. He can't take a compliment. He got to break it down and make it precise so nobody can get the wrong idea. But
well, you know what, Kenny, I like that a lot. Ken Sinclair, any chance we could get you to come to the United States and run for president? We need that kind of honesty in our political system.
Transparency.
I'm not allowed to cross the border.
Oh, damn. I don't think we are either. So how are we going to do this? The first remote president.
Yeah, that's right. If I can do it by Zoom, I'll do it.
Well, yeah, that makes one of you. So, but listen, hey, Ken, listen, the October issue is out. It's a good one. How about let's start right off with that. Tell us about the theme and what the issue is all about.
Okay. The theme is, of course, transformation. We've kind of been pushing this for a while, but of course, transformation is a big topic. The twist we threw in was tossing the transformation torches, and what that kind of pokes a little bit at is just the whole concept of we were kind of doing what we were we were doing, and then we all got sent home to our rooms. And when we got there, we didn't know how to work from our rooms, and so we had to go talk to these young connected kids and figure out how the heck to do that. And so it was a good mixing of the age groups. I think we all grew younger in the transformation. And as the young people tossed us torches of here's how you do that, here's how you run a Zoom meeting, here's how you blog, here's how you do all of these things that we had to learn how to do, then they kind of got interested a little bit in what it is we were doing. And they're asking some great questions like, why do you go to those buildings to do that? And why, just a whole bunch of myriad of questions that were pretty good. And does that really work out for you? And are you going to continue doing that? So it's been a great change, I guess. And so I chose the concept of there were like people tossing these torches, and you had to catch them. And of course, if you miss them, you can get burned. And the other thing that was a startling observation, I guess, is that some of these torches weren't in fact torches. They were just burning trees that had such stable roots they couldn't really move. And so in the transformation flame, they kind of just got caught. So so a lot of things happening. Then to try and take all that back to what to some actual reports. So basically, we've got Brian Turner chatting about his alignment project. I think that's a good transformation trend is that we're going to see is we've got all these standards, all of these things moving, and everybody is now being forced to cooperate. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we're actually in transformation. By definition, transformation means that we're going to transform, we're going to do business differently than we have before. And so we're going to work with different people, and we're pulling together. Everybody had their own little game. We kind of grew up in an industry where everybody had their own little game. And now we see very clearly that we need to combine our games if we're ever to survive. So so I think alignment, combining, there's been lots of examples of that in the industry. Crabs in a pail is a cute one that William has done. Bill, he's so formal. Bill has done, and he's just talking about if you kind of all imagine this as crabs in a pail, or are you kind of climbing to the top or pushing the other guys to the bottom? But the bottom line is we're all in the pail together. And he takes it from outside the industry, taking a look and seeing how our industry is evolving. So some interesting stuff there. Mark is pointing out to us the ever importance of cybersecurity, and October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Sudha talks a little bit about the humanity of AI automation. It's kind of an interesting one. Nicholas is on with his Beyond Buildings podcast. He's dragging in some very interesting people into that. And in my editorial, I kind of circle around and I talk a little bit about how is automated buildings transforming, because I don't think any of us can escape. And originally, automated buildings, as you guys know, was born to pull together the dot-com companies. In 1999, it went together, and what happened is everybody became a dot-com company, but there was no directory of dot-coms, and how could you find people in our industry? And so automated buildings took on that task and attempted to try and bring the dot-coms together. And I kind of see where we are right now is now publications have become, and blogs and social media have become such an important part of our industry that that the whole evolution has started over again. Now we have these amazing blogs and amazing articles that are written on LinkedIn and 3 or 4 other major platforms, but no one really knows where they are. There's no organization of them by by subject matter. And so I kind of see almost a rebirth and start over again with automated buildings here in the latter years to try and pull this together. So that's the big transformation, that rather than sort of publishing articles, I think you're going to see a trend for automated buildings to move towards trying to hook you up to where these resources are, and they're quite incredible. The other observation is every one of them does a much better job of presenting their information than automated buildings does. But of course, if people in the industry don't know that those articles exist, it's all for naught. They basically, what's happen is everyone is kind of building their own network, and they have very good penetration within their network. So they get out to 1,000, 2,000, maybe even 10,000 folks. But the subject matter they're pushing out is of general interest to the industry. And I think it's interesting to take the bigger view and look at how all of those blogs fit together. And so anyway, that's kind of our new mission. And I've started to pull some of that into the October, and you'll see more of that happening into the November. And certainly we'll be starting to highlight more what folks like Nicholas and James Dice and basically the people that are taking over from automated buildings. But the problem is they've all got a little bit of a focus, and they're all going in a direction. We need to kind of see how do those little focuses fit into the big picture of our industry. So anyway, that's sort of.
I love it, Ken Sinclair. It's like automated building is going to become the Google for smart building controls and HVAC controls. I think it's a really, really useful premise, and I think you're going to do great with it. Congratulations. Well thought out, sir.
Actually, that's an interesting one, because this, no way in the world it's going to become the Google. But the problem is the only reason we know what to Google or Yahoo or whatever it is we use, or Duck or something, the only reason we know what to go and get information is when we talk to each other, or we share articles, or often we just share a URL. It's have you seen this? Cluck. And so basically the purpose of our network is to share, to tell you, go Google this. Like, so that's more the task I think I would have, is I would find something that you never even thought of Googling. And then when you go there, you can either read what I've written about it to get you started, or you can just directly go to it. And I think that's the value, the new value that I'll add. So anyway, can you see what that kind of a transformation? So this kind of, I don't know, you got to get the hook out here and stop me talking pretty soon. But that leads us to where our next article that we actually just come online, and it's called Navigating Never Never. And what that's about is we've been actually we're heading off into an area we keep doing stuff that we've never done before, and stuff that we've said we're never going to do that. And the problem is now we are going to do it, and we are just crossing over into that new never land. And it's an interesting thing. And so for automated buildings, I will never support other publications. And in fact, there I am saying never. And yep, that's what I'm going to do. Is in fact, I see the new model is to pull together these incredible publications and blogs and try and highlight them, and also to try and curate them and try and make some kind of sense out of what they're saying and how they fit. And I think almost everybody's business is like that. We're all becoming concentrators of trying to put stuff together. Maybe.
Well, Ken, there's three things that you said. I'm just going to circle back a little bit about the. In the beginning, you brought the .com companies together in 1999, and that's really interesting. I think Eric Stromquist started out on that kind of same pathway. When I met Eric in 2008, you said to me that you needed to put a site together that served as a portal, that people could, looking for things and learning things, could come to a place, and even though they couldn't get all that information, there was a pivot point back out into the industry. So it was like, and then the third-party verification I thought was very important. And then you talk about the doing the things that you said you would never do. I think that began with your collaboration, your collaboratorium back in, when was that, 2000? You and Mark Peacock were on a trip or a taxi coming out of the Chicago AHR to the airport. And I think that's where it was the first time people were doing things they didn't want to do because it was a faster way to get things done. Instead of a big vendor trying to run the whole thing from A to Z, a bunch of little people and company came together, formed a team, collaboratorium, and next you know, it was extremely successful. And then we had that torch concept. You know, to me, it was like Eric and I were with you and AHR, one of the breakouts, and Paul Oswald said about, you know, passing the torch back. Literally, the technology and the information we had, he was concerned that we literally are passing our torch of, you know, what we do for a living back to the next generation that's coming and taking our place. So when you had that torches and that the transformative torch, that's what I was thinking is how can we effectively give the benefit of all the work we've done over a couple of careers and make that available and efficient and, you know, to the next group of people that are going to take the torches from us. So I thought that's very, very cool stuff. But I think it's important that people can hear your explaining it, what it means and how we all can interpret that. So I thought it was a great addition. But I really got a kick out of that gentleman who told about the, what's his name here? He's Zoom Etiquette by Manny Mandrzuzik. Help me out with that. But it was really cool how he said, you know, if he said if we only were a little bit smarter and we could see what was coming down, you know, crystal ball stuff about, you know, how if you invested in, what's he say here, plexiglass, if you invested in plexiglass, you'd be a rich man, or any of the Zoom platforms. But we've spent so much time, just to shift gear here and bring some light into this, some humor. I thought it was a great article to read because he said there's Zoom etiquette that people show up late for their own meetings. They don't have a background that, you know, makes you dizzy, or, you know, you can't follow what they're saying because there's so much noise in the background. And then using fake backgrounds, I thought that was really funny how, you know, there were, you know, the backgrounds that people would have that they were annoying and distracting to people so they couldn't concentrate on it. And then people just were inefficient with the media they chose, like Zoom or whatever. You know, there's no directions. Most of us had to learn almost all of what we do now online with these meetings was a stumble process and a bruise process. And then last but not least, he said bandwidth, you know, how you have so many people working together at home or whatever that you got your kids up there playing toys, or not toys, but some sort of a, you know, internet game, or and your bandwidth goes down, so your corporate meeting suffers. And but I thought it was just a sign of the times how we're getting so changed in this transformation from being in place, networking in person, to basically a virtual world, so that we can still function, but takes a little bit of talent and a little bit of, and I always get a kick out of you saying about digital natives. You know, I had to learn so many new things here just to stay up and get to the meetings and whatever, learn the hard way, you know, whether it's a virtual background or whatever. But so that was another thing about the transformation. So
Actually,
cool.
it's interesting. Manny was in our industry. He was a big push in OPC, and he kind of got sent home early in the game, I guess, probably about 10, 20 years ago. His father was not well, and so he came to actually Vancouver Island, and he took on a new career. But because of his depth in the industry, he has a good feel for what it is we do, and he still writes. But his day job is more teaching, and he calls himself a rehabilitation consultant. So he's basically taking folks and retreading them and putting them back in. So he's working with older folks, but he's also working with a lot of younger folks. And that's where his inner wisdom comes from with all of this, is that he's, you know, by teaching, you learn by teaching, kind of thing. And so that's how so has some of this insight. So yeah, that's good. I like that article very much too. Yeah, Manny's a great guy. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the company he worked for originally, but anyway, he was actually did all the writing for the OPC Foundation back in the day. If you have to go back on on our site, you'll actually see his evolution as you see everybody's evolution.
What do you think about this transformation thing? You know, I think I'm over 30. Ken, you're over 40, and Eric, you're over 30 years in the business. So together we have over 100 years of you know, testimony and experience. But the transformation, Eric, what do you see? What is your highlight of the most impressive thing that you find great about it? And what's the negative aspect of transformation?
Well,
Because not all the time it's good.
well, no, yeah, I agree. Well, it is interesting, and I'm still thinking about Zoom etiquette, and I'm going to have to get a Miss Manners book on Zoom etiquette, make sure I'm doing it right. I think that's really fascinating. And I think there's a lot to that. And I think when you talk about transformation, obviously manners figure into it, right? Or norms, or what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Um, it's fascinating. I think we're at a tipping point. I think in the past, I've told both you guys that I have two mentors. One of them's in his 70s. He was the first guy I ever worked for. And he's a voracious reader and a voracious thinker. And to this day, when I speak to him, whatever he's reading, I go get the book and read it. He's one. My second mentor is this guy named Anthony Bronzo, Kenny, that you've met. And, Anthony's a millennial and, completely different sort of approaches and different ideas. So whatever he reads, I go get and read. But Anthony was telling me, and he's really sort of on the trends. And so here's one of the things that sort of like indirectly answers your question. Is Anthony's really big into virtual reality, right? Augmented reality. And, to the point that he and his girlfriend went to a store, this was about a year ago, and she put something on and it was a shark scene, and she almost had a seizure. It was so real, right? Where the shark was attacking her, it was that real. So Anthony seems to believe that, there's a movement afoot amongst the artificial intelligence folks and virtual reality folks that, we'll all be wearing these masks and we won't leave our houses. We will just do everything via this sort of virtual reality thing will become the real reality. Okay. So when I look at that, and I mean, if you think about like just in our buildings, how, we can, go through and look at buildings through robots or whatever, and, or even the digital twin, that whole concept. So it seems like one of the real sort of disruptive things is what's going to be real and what's going to be virtual. It seems like that line is being pulled closer and closer together. And then, of course, the downside, I think, to all this transformation potentially, and people like Elon Musk, have said this. I mean, if you get the artificial intelligence, you get the robots. That if you play that out to its end, then we're as human beings are probably no longer necessary in the game. And and people have proposed that once with the self-learning and all, once they become self-aware, then they're going to look at us and go, we don't need Ken and Eric anymore. We'll keep Otto around because he's interesting and has great vocabulary words that he can always teach us, but the other guys are gone. So there are those that will argue that the end game of this is self-destruction of us as we know it. I think that's a bit far-fetched, but that's the downside to it. The great side to it is obviously you've got an economy that crashes, right? Because people can't feasibly go out and go do business in person, yet we're able to ramp up an alternative path. And, and a lot of businesses are back on track now. I mean, it's different, but they have a vehicle through Zoom and through virtual that allows them to stay in business. So that's maybe a plus.
I always go back to the first guy that, a bunch of guys digging a ditch and a steam engine shows up. They must have thought, man, life is going to end as we know it. And it did. It ended as they knew it, but it went on. And I don't really see it. It's just another huge transformation that we have to go through. I think it'll all shake out. It'll reorganize. Communities will reorganize in different manners. Remoteness will become acceptable. The big thing is traditional jobs will change. Traditional movement, transportation will change. It's just big, huge changes, and that's what I'm sort of suggesting is in this transformation journey, you need to understand what the things that touch you that are just physically not going to be there anymore, and basically put your business model in a different light. And again, there's as everything, it's not going to happen like that. But slowly the trends will happen, and also it's becoming pretty clear that we're going to see like a hybrid and a repurposing of the buildings, and just a lot of change. But if you're trying to look, trying to get back to where you were, I don't think that's a good philosophy. I think you've got.
Yeah, well, no, it's not there anymore. But to your point, Ken, I want to follow up on something you just said. You think it's going to be a gradual change, and My question is, it doesn't seem like anything is gradual right now. I mean, I think the adaptation to Zoom, and for example, was almost instantaneous. How quickly we adapted to the quote unquote, COVID situation. So I think one of the variables here has got to be speed of adaptation, right? Meaning you better be able to adapt quickly. But I don't see anything happening gradually, at least vis-a-vis how things have happened in the past. I think we're at warp speed. And I wonder if you would agree or disagree with that statement.
Oh yeah, the speed is phenomenal. It's well, the other thing is we're transforming from our kind of sleepy old world into the world of IT, and again, that's something I think we can get strength from those that were born connected and stuff. They're kind of looking at us and saying, like, why are you guys having so much trouble with this? It's not that hard. And even the whole socialization, they've actually figured out how to socialize with not necessarily being in the same room with people. Their friend circle is not necessarily even in the same town and stuff. So they actually, the way they pull together by common thought rather than so much distance and geography. Just a lot of changes going on very rapidly. I don't profess to know where it's all going, but it's going fast.
Well, that's for sure. And but I think, like you were saying about the social things, I was reading some interesting things. And before we get too far away from the transformation and changes and how we track and everything, you get that Realcomm IBCon event coming up in Denver or Colorado, was the Gaylord Rockies, October 26th. But the point you were making about the how we can do a lot, Eric, with how we'll put our visors on, and then we're connected. We're doing virtual reality, and then the only thing that does is I don't, even if we could communicate to robots to get things done, and artificial intelligence can really grow in magnitude, that it can simulate human presence in many ways. But I still think that there's going to always be that. Like the Wizard of Oz, there's going to be that guy behind the curtain. You got the big facade with all the noise making, but it's a little guy behind her, pulling the gears and pulleys to make the whole digital and artificial thing work, unless artificial intelligence supplants human, thinking and whatever. And they're saying now with real estate, it's coming around where, the big boys, CB Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, Jones Lang LaSalle, they're really and truly on top of this, because I read a very disturbing article last week where they're saying not only is the building itself being devalued in this situation, but it's going to be valued based on its ability to generate cash and revenue. And if you can't get people into the buildings to keep to generate cash and revenue, the engine stops. So they were coming up with all these ideas, and when whether the building itself can be transformed into living quarters, or have a different retail concept, or integrate, business with pleasure, make theme park, they're going to have to come up with, they're going to continuously develop. Just like I saw a restaurant the other day where they had all these little teepees, these little glass teepees, so that they can have a group of, 4 to 8 people inside of each place, so that they can have more space in their parking lots, are now portable tables, for restaurants. I mean, I see innovation happening very rapidly, to your point about how quickly change comes, but human mind and spirit is never going to be conquered. I think there's always going to be people pushing back into those buildings, finding a reason and purpose, and people have to satisfy their human instincts. They need to pull somebody's hair to make sure they're real, and they're, and the other person's real. So I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we'll let that go, at least not in our lifetimes, but I think we need to focus on the business and how, again, the leadership and the vision of how we're going to deal with COVID-19 and whatever's to come, because COVID-19, they want that name to go away. They want it to become a biohazard, a bio environment, so that all these big people investing in these cameras and all this indoor air quality and of course, ionization and UV lighting, they don't want to feel like it was a one-off just for this COVID-19. So the marketing, transition is into the permanence of these measures. It's never going away. And so you integrate these into your buildings, that's obviously going to be a lead play, but that's why these Realcomm IBCon meetings are so important. I think we got to keep challenging it. Like I myself, I'm not going, And Ken Sinclair, are you going? I think you're on a lot of the stuff, aren't you? Or you're not going? Okay.
No, not
So
going.
so
We're not allowed to cross border.
oh, that's right. That's right. That's an easy one. And Eric, you're not going. So, but there are people that are going, and these guys and women are going to show us how they were able to make an environment as safe as possible. Maybe not perfect. Maybe not, maybe not, contamination free or COVID-19 free or bio-challenging free, but they're going to show you what's happening. I did get a preview of some of the technology coming here, and they have things now that can monitor everything in the building, way beyond just your temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, all the other VOCs and stuff, to the point where the entire building is being able to be monitored for what health hazards it presents. Just some new technology coming out that
Well,
so
Kenny,
it's just, I think that's
want
where we need to go, is the frontier. We need to go.
right.
We need to focus that we can do this, and we must do this.
Right. Well, I want to hop back in because I've been to 2 commercial office buildings the last couple of days to go to the doctor, right? And, never felt safer. So the buildings, and I think one of them might have been a Jones Lang LaSalle, and they're dialed in. I felt perfectly safe in there. In other words, you walk in, you have to have a mask on. There's somebody at the desk to make sure you have a mask on. You go on the elevator, and only 2 people allowed in the elevator at a time. There are little things that are 6 feet apart where you stand. They monitor that. You go up to when I went to the doctor's office, there's the nurse there that takes your temperature, asks you questions, does some screening. And then when you're in there, you're wearing the mask. So, I think, to me, maybe the buildings, it's less about the safety issue, because I think they have taken steps. And if you believe that the mask work and the social distancing works, which, as near as I can tell globally, I mean, that seems to be a theme that it really eradicates the spread of it. Then it's just where you're going back into buildings, and you're going to have different habits, different ways of, like, before they had soap and water in the bathroom. I mean, once they figured out that you need to wash your hands, it became a new social norm. So to me, I'm wondering, and I'm posing this as a question, guys, is it less now about the safety? Because as near as I can tell, the 2 or 3 experiences I've had where I've been out to office buildings, and then even going to the grocery store and going to restaurants and eating in restaurants, at least where I'm at, they've adapted. You wear the mask, they got the hand sanitizer, they make sure you're social distance. So people are back out. The office building I was in with the doctor's office, it was, I want to say it was packed. It wasn't packed because obviously they're limiting the number of people in, so everybody's 6 feet apart. I mean, all the chairs in the waiting room are 6 feet apart. My concern is not, maybe not so much that, because I think the buildings are safer, but now you've got, vis-a-vis a commercial office building, you got, like, as Ken Sinclair, people like Pinterest going, man, we are canceling, we're going to pay the fine, we're not going to build this office building now. You got people now that will probably always have offices, but they're going to cut back on the office space because they've invested in people working remotely, and that seems to be working. So I don't think it's even the case of people coming back into the buildings. I think the business case is, will they ever come back to the degree that they had? So now if you are one of these big office people, you've got a monthly note you're having to pay. Somebody said the other day that Marriott's, I think it's a $20 billion or $20 million note that they have. And this is alleged, I can't, but they basically just stopped paying it. And so a lot of these people are just not paying the bank. If the bank's not getting paid, then the government's paying the bank, and then the economic cycle just spirals even more out of control. So I think it's maybe less of a building safety thing now. I think they've gotten that under control, and more of an economic thing, where what's the economic case for people coming back to buildings now that they...
Well, I think that's a very good point. Well, Ken, just let me think real quicker. So yeah, the Marriott's 200 resorts stopped payment in April. The Cheesecake franchise hasn't paid rent since April too. Or some of the things that are coming out are frightening, and we don't understand the depth of the destruction to their economic health of many corporations and to the country at large, or to the world at large. But I think the point you're making is valid, but this work from home thing has a couple of unintended consequences. It reminds me of industries when they talked about pollution being a negative externality that nobody paid for, and then one day we all got to deal with all this pollution that the corporations created but didn't pay for it. So we have to fix things. We have to fix the atmosphere, the ground, whatever. The same thing's going to happen too, I think, with working from home. In other words, there's going to be stress points. There's going to be people that are saturated with too much in-house time that they can't function again professionally. They need to get out. They need to circulate. This whole thing of saving money by not driving and saving pollution from cars not going back and forth. Well, you get autonomous vehicles interspersed there, and all of a sudden we're getting maximum efficiencies with transportation. I think we're just going to keep going, but there's always going to be a need for these buildings because of working from home. Somebody's talking on the phone to their boss, trips down the steps, sues their company because they were engaged in a business related activity at home. I mean, people want money for the babysitting. They want money for the bandwidth. So that economic, savings that they realized immediately and say, hey, this is great, man, we just saved a whole bunch of money. That's going to come back out. You're going to start, there's going to be different bills to pay. There's going to be different, activities that are going to be compensated for. So I think it looks heavy-sided towards working at home is going to be a permanent staple, but I think it's going to fluctuate.
Well, you might be right, Kenny, and I think some people, especially like us, are going to want to get back. But let's ask the millennial on the call, because the millennial, Ken Sinclair, has always been talking about the fact that the millennials want to be able to work remotely. And I mean, Ken Sinclair, think about conversations we were having, up to a year ago about, one of the things in the commercial building is how do you create the space where the millennials will actually come in and go to work there? I mean, people were designing their building designs based on attracting where people would actually want to come to work. Ken Sinclair, what do you think? You think Kenny's got a point there that people are going to eventually just go, we got to go back to work. We want to be in the building, and they're going to make them come back to work? Or you think this is going to be the new millennial thing?
I kind of think it's going to evolve to quite significant repurposing. Your observation that the buildings aren't going to go away is a good one. I think they will always be there. I think in the major mega cities, you're going to see basically a definition of a smaller community within the building, like a borough or something like that. One thing that COVID hit everybody on the nose is our food supply and all that is very significant to us, and transportation. If we need to, if we can't travel, then we basically have built a life built on that we can travel anywhere we want, anytime, and we have to rethink that, I think. So I think what you'll start to see is that the communities around the large buildings will start to become the large buildings, and quite possibly part of them will become residents, part of them will become a grow-up is another thing that's kind of an interesting thing. Shopping centers, extra space in shopping centers has been defined that what a logical place to grow food. That should be, we shouldn't be going there to get food that's trucked in. That should be, got all these lights, we've got all this power, it was there for air conditioning. We now have everything we need to grow the lettuce. You grow it as you need it, kind of thing. And basically, I need so many heads of lettuce, I'll grow it on demand, kind of thing. So that whole that's the transformation that I'm sort of seeing, is that kind of radical change. And that involves, everybody kind of scared that, what am I going to do? And well, there you are. You're now in a construction project retrofitting this shopping center from a Gucci store to a grow up. So it's just transformation.
Well, Ken, you said something, I think it was 2 shows ago, about these suburban strip malls that have gigantic parking lots, and how the parking lots are getting repurposed too. That is so true. I've seen construction sites now on giant parking lots that used to have room for 2,500 cars, and now they're building something in the middle of it somewhere. So somebody's repurposing the outside of the store. But to your point, the Kaufman's building in Pittsburgh is a famous building. Kaufman was bought out by Macy's. But everybody used to say, meet me under the Kaufman's clock. It was even in movies. There's a famous old golden clock on a street corner in Pittsburgh. They're taking this building, and they're doing exactly what you said. They've got a hotel is on the base level, ground levels. They got a daycare center. They have 311 apartments. They have a small convenient grocery store and stores, restaurants. And then on the top of the building, they're going to build an ice skating rink for. So to think of that, rather than, implode the building, they're going to take the time, the investment, they're going to run for the long haul, and they're going to give people a new way to live, a new surge of convenience that really looks at the family unit. So, I mean, it was just the young corporate executives coming into a city for a while. They wanted a nice townhouse or apartment in the city that was close. They could walk to work or whatever, but that was it. They looked for nightlife and they looked for, entertainment. That was one of the criticisms of Pittsburgh was we had no nightlife. They finally built a casino and then they got some clubs. Southside just exploded with all these really neat microbreweries or whatever. And then COVID hit. But I like to think and, kind of end on some of the benefits of people's innovations and then showing us a way, giving us that torch you're talking about. Some of the transformation torches is just people showing people that it can be done. And I really like that background you got there where you have you have this frozen sky that formed a circle, but then you have the sun in the background. It has so much potential, inert potential in its presence. And I think that's what we have with our situation. Where a lot of people are looking at this as a kind of calamity and a catastrophe or challenge to the modern world. A lot of other people are looking at this as an opportunity to come up with new technologies, innovation, and move forward to the next frontier.
In our local cities here, we've to try and get the extra space for the restaurants and stuff. We actually opened our restaurants a while back, and one of the common things is to take the parking spots in front of the restaurants and turn them into outside things. And in most places, that is going to stay. And so I think that's another evolution as you start to see. We used to have big glass doors and you could either go in the building or out of the building, but now you're seeing the walls of the building are kind of crumbling and it's coming onto the street, and the people are an integral part. They're kind of drawn into it. I'm sitting in what used to be 3 parking spaces, and I've got a nice umbrella, or in fact maybe even a heater over my head to keep me a little warm on colder days. I got the great food coming out of the great restaurant that I always wanted to go to. I've got my social distance. Life's good. And there was a whole bunch of infrastructure changes that had to be made, a whole bunch of but the one thing that is actually amazing me is the fact that governments and cities and stuff who have never been able to do anything in 10 years have now within months can roll out or even days can roll out an ordinance and say, yes, that's okay to take those parking spots and you can have that and this, and basically segmenting up the street in front of the properties. So again, that's transformation in my mind, and flaming transformation, just completely different. And transformation, the other comment that we have on that is that you're not going back. Once you do this radical transformation and it works, you're not going to go back to doing what you're doing. You're not going to go back to driving to work, and that's just not going to happen. So we're heading over a cliff. Lehman's jumping over a cliff.
No, I like the analogy, but not the lemons jumping over a cliff. No, I think it's more along the lines of, what you said before, that the train is coming, you're digging the ditch, and, you can keep digging the ditch if you want to, you're just not going to get very far. But what I hear you saying, Ken Sinclair, and Kenny, I hear you saying the same thing, is that, look, the world as we know it is changing. And I use the word tipping point. I don't think it's ever going to be exactly the way it was before. It's not that you couldn't go back and dig a ditch if you wanted to, but once you got the steam engine, why would you want to? And I think what we're all saying as well is that there's great opportunity here. You have to adapt. It's funny. I was thinking about, the restaurants being outside in the park. I go, well, what's that going to do in Pittsburgh, right? When it gets cold. And then I remember we used to sell these things called infrared heaters, which, essentially they're like the sun. They heat up and they generate radiant heat. I'm thinking, well, wow, if you sell infrared heaters, you got a hell of a market with the restaurants in the cold weather, because you can sit out in the cold with that and it'll keep you warm, right? So, it just seems like we're entering a brave new world, and what would your message be to our listeners as we enter this brave new world, guys?
I'm sorry, was that for me, Eric?
Yeah, who was that for?
Both of you.
Well, you go first, Ken.
Let's restate the question, because it sounds complex.
Well, no, what I'm getting at is, sort of summarizing what I've heard both of you say is that, you know, the world as we know it is changing.
Yeah.
Right? What I've also heard you guys say is, well, hey, there's great opportunity here. It's different than what you've normally done. And what I've also heard you, Ken Sinclair, say, and Kenny to a degree, is that the world as we know it will never be the same again. It's going to be different. And so my question was, as we enter this brave new world, what would you say to our listeners about it?
Well, I'm excited. You know, again, you're a passionate reader, and I like to read too. I've recently finished a 4-novel series by Tad Williams called Otherland, and it was all about virtual reality, artificial intelligence. In fact, it came from Ready Player One. Remember Ready Player One? It was a book and a movie, and it was pretty snazzy because it had some really far out stuff where, you know, different things, battles were fought virtually, but they had the real world consequences, you know, and corporations fought, you know, each other in a almost like a game like environment where the least likely hero was a guy that was real fancy or had incredible perceptions and skills with his fingers and his hand-eye coordination. And it was like an asteroid game. It could shoot things faster, you know, and there's several books like that I think gave us some sort of a, you know, Jules Verne look into the future. Otherland ends up that they create a total world. They literally, people that had fortunes were spending their money on creating a virtual reality. So you had RL, real life, and VL, virtual life. And basically at the end of the book, after this enormous, each one of these things was over 800 pages, it was really an investment of time and energy to do it. But it was like going through history of all of the, you know, computers, how everything became, that led up to people wearing suits and going into submersive environments and battling and whatever. And the good versus evil, everything's there. And it comes out at the end where everybody seeks portions of real life and virtual life and takes the best of both and then fight again to live harmoniously and enjoy life, because until the next great surge of innovation, which prolongs human life, you've only got a limited amount of time, you know, so how do you want to spend it? So, and then families, you know, again, so as long as we stay pretty well the same human, you know, tempo that we have now, where the vast majority like to have families, that people still have ceremonies, get married, then they have a responsibility to raise children and then create a family environment. I think you're always going to see mix, take the best of the old world and mix it with the best of the upcoming new world and survive quite well. So I think there's a lot of,
Kenny, that taking the best of the old world and mix it with the new world, that's just wishful thinking for me, you and Ken Sinclair, right? I mean, come on. Go ahead.
Hey, I told you I did a lot of reading. I like to see happy endings. I'm a happy ending type of guy.
Yeah, actually, the way I would kind of see it is what our task is we all need to really educate ourselves into what is the transformation. And the other point I wanted to make is that the transformation is not happening at the same speed or even the same direction in various places. So we're seeing that the local community is much more significant than we used to have sort of, you know, national trends. I think we're less interested in national trends. We're more interested in what's happening in the block down the street and in the small city next to us. And I think we're starting to see more of a life being built around the core of these communities. So we're starting to see where we went through a great stage of moving to the large cities. I think we're going to see a bit of a resurge back to living in the suburbs and rebuilding those suburbs transforming those suburbs into something completely different and taking sleepy old towns and turning them back in. So I think you're going to see quite a bit of movement in people, and people will basically start to select areas of the country that they would like to stay in because of some of the attributes of the transformation. So that's an interesting one. So I think what you're going to see is when you start studying what's really happening here, how are they treating it? And there's even a movement that we keep talking about visual reality and stuff. With inside of this, I'm seeing a movement of people who are just moving out into the bush and getting the campfire going. And I don't want to have anything to do with any of this stuff.
So that's where Brad White is these days, huh?
3.
So that's where Brad White is these days. We're wondering what was up with Brad. No, Ken, you bring up such a good point, and one thing and again, Ken, you just I don't know if you realize it, but sometimes you just hit on stuff, and I've been thinking about this since you said it. The grow up community where you're going to take these buildings and start growing the lettuce on demand, here, in your local building or in your local area. And I mean, wow. I mean, let's bypass the farmers to a degree, right? I mean, and it makes so much sense. You're going to have the extra space. And what I hear you say is instead of going to nationalization, you see a trend towards localization. And that is a really interesting I'm still processing that. That's a great thought, though.
Eric, you said, and Ken too, that, so if you break things down like into the MUSH markets, municipalities, university schools, and hospitals, each one of those markets is going to go through its own separate journey. Like the schools, for instance, across the country, we have family, distributed or dispersed, in 10 states, and each state's different. And then each locality, each community within the state, each county is different.
Each school. Each
I know.
school has got different rules and
it'll
different
take a while to
schedules.
measure, but Eric, you tell me about how much you've invested and how you kind of like the school systems the way it is now, because it seems you compare it against your experience in school and how you had, we were kind of I went to a Catholic school and it was almost like a military, it was like, we stood up, we did everything together. We found out, we marched to different places, 2 by 2, but, nowadays, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to go to school compared to my, experience in kindergarten, first grade, all the way up through high school. I mean, I can't imagine how the kids must feel when they have graduations and they don't have that experience to have a prom and whatever. Because these were some of the fondest, craziest moments of my life. And so to do that virtually or to do that on a computer-based program seems to me like it's going to be lacking substance that was, at least in my life, was vitally important. And then so the next thing you go over to universities, schools. I mean, universities got to be probably, we say retail hurts. Well, travel is worse, so vacations, resorts, and cruise ships, they're second when the worst, but universities are going through a transition. I can't even imagine what it would be like to put together a budget and a program where you're trying to figure out what's happening next. Do you open up the dormitories? Do you bring them in? And then somebody comes in and gets COVID and spreads it to the whole, these are just really interesting times. And then you go to municipalities that have to stay open. You have to have post offices open. You have to have, you have to have fundamental services that have to run 24/7, nonstop, and whatever it takes, you're going to do it. So you have all these challenges across different markets. So it's very difficult to say just in the general terms, this is what's going to happen. It's going to happen region to region, market to market, and it'll be really interesting to watch.
Well, let me just ask you a silly question about the mail, and Ken, you can answer this from a Canadian perspective. I mean, with the advent of email, is the post office, you got UPS, you got FedEx, you got to ship stuff for sure, but in terms of mail, actually sending a letter out, is that something that's maybe seen? Are we spending a lot of money on that we don't need to, since we have email and DocuSign and all that kind of stuff?
Probably, but you've got different generations, and some generations don't have,
Ken,
a lot of the world's not connected.
Kenny, they don't care about us anymore. Okay, it is my Anna's brother is fond of saying.
I hate to be a spoiler here, but you know what? And the only way I can say is the military experience I had is that if God forbid we ever have electronic pulsation or something happens, it takes down your gorgeous internet world. And you've got to do stuff old school, old fashioned way. You cannot unlearn things, and you need to still know how to bake bread, regardless of how fast Amazon can get it to you.
No, that's because you're right about that, Kenny. But if we lose that grid, the last thing I'm going to be concerned about is mailing a letter.
It's true, but you might want your payments. You might want to.
No, I'll go the way of Marriott and other people and just not pay.
Actually, it's kind of interesting. One of the things I just heard from the kids is when there's a conversation like this going on, they all just look at each other and they say, "Boomers."
No. What was that? Say that? I didn't miss that. What did they say?
Those guys are out of here.
He's saying that the youngsters make fun of us, Kenny.
Make fun of us. We're the boomers. They're just.
Oh yeah.
They use that as an explanation.
Okay.
When things are getting very confusing and stuff like that, if they're in a meeting and there's all these young people.
Well, heaven forbid that they don't know how to read and write and they can't communicate in the event. It happens. You go to a hotel and you don't have internet, you start swearing and cussing, call the front desk, and they say, well, move use your hotspot, bring your own
Well,
technology.
Well,
And then,
Kenny, to your point, and Ken Sinclair, I don't know if you've seen this. There's a movie on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, and it's all about the adverse effect of social media and how people are being manipulated and so on and so forth. They've got these behavioral scientists, and they've got artificial intelligence that monitor every move you make. And bottom line, they just know how to manipulate your ass. So have you seen it, Ken Sinclair?
No.
Well, when you do, you can look at them and go, millennials.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the other thing I like to point out too is that in all of our changes and rapid things that have happened, the first article of automated buildings is still there 21 years later. This stuff is a lot more permanent than a lot of stuff we have. You're quite right, Kenny. When it disappears, it's annoying and we're immobilized. But the bottom line is we can recreate it in a matter of minutes and on another network. Like when my network goes down, I basically create a hotspot on my cell phone and basically pick up, and I'm back in operation, not operating on my my cable connection or walking on Wi-Fi. And there's more and more of those kinds of services. We're starting to see, I don't know what's happening down there, but up here, the cable companies are getting into the phone business, and the phone companies are getting into the cable business. You can basically stream your TV on your phone, or you can basically have your phone, you
use your TV as your phone. If you
hide your phone
well,
service.
Ken Sinclair, if you want to read an interesting book that challenges, again, I hate to be a spoiler, but I think it's almost like the wireless wired, conversation where wireless, when it works, it's fine. It's superior to wired, saves money and whatever. But if you look at any critical application, it's wired and wireless because you have to have backups. And I think too is that there's a book called The 100-Year Marathon. I don't want to go into it too much, but there's forces at work that actually are perfecting ways to eliminate all your satellites and everything should the need arise, where they can totally incapacitate a digital environment. Totally. So I'm just saying, don't ever give up. The instincts and inclinations to stay able to do things, the old school way, if that's the right word to say it, or the old technology, is never something to throw away. It's always there. It's just like batteries and whatever, again, because I think what happens is we get too far. We know that the technology is great, and we know that it has the ability to, it never goes away and we can bring it back. But I'm just concerned that if everybody abandons everything totally, it doesn't have small portions of their time invested in, doing things manually, it could be a bad thing.
That's a good point, Kenny. Good point. Ken Sinclair, let's shift gears for a minute. You have been participating in the Monday Lives, and you guys had a pretty interesting session last week. How about telling us about that?
Yeah, okay, good. It's I thought it would be a good one to bring to this interview, because it was done by Greg Barnes at Active Logic. I think you know Greg, and his title was IoT Opportunity, Transforming the Distribution Business, and he did a great presentation, and of course it started a great discussion, but he just talked about the evolutionary growth of and changes, transformation, I'll use the word again, and entering into the never land of what things you guys said you would never do as distributors that you are in fact now doing. It was pretty interesting discussion, and we talked about he talked about the evolution of the master systems integrators, and then there kept coming these projects that somebody wants you to integrate something you've never even heard of, and how do you do that? And so as distributors, they were kind of forced to try and figure it out, just like you were forced to go and find new products in the past to keep feeding your chain. You're now forced to go and find new services. And so as they developed these new services, then they started to work, and a lot of them were like collaborations of some of their master systems integrators, and there was a lot of change going on there. So it was a pretty interesting discussion. The other thing that it ended up with, which was I found even more interesting, is they've been doing some work for Amazon and Walmart, which then I asked the question, had they looked at them as being, that ultimately these guys are going to be your distributors. And they hadn't gone that far yet, although has definitely been some discussion of that. And what that brought up some pretty interesting discussions in the industry is if all your controls just appear at the door by FedEx or whatever, now how do we, the task of getting them together and the task of doing that is kind of a different task, and definitely a transformation.
Hang on, let me get this straight. So
Distribution
Greg Barnes is, let me get this straight, Ken. So Greg Barnes is saying that he's trying to get Amazon and Walmart to be his distributors. Am I understanding?
No, it was not saying that, but the fear is there. The fear is that will, in fact, as the commoditization, maybe that's a word, of the controls is getting to the point that, we have to sort of see that. But so the value of the distributor is in being able to know what to do with this stuff. Getting it to the door is not a problem, but the thing of how do we do with it? How do we support the master systems integrators, and how do they get that? So it's becoming more of a virtual kind of transition. These are my words, not necessarily Greg's words. If you'd want, I'd recommend I'll send you the link, or if you actually go to it, it's the September 28th Monday live session, which the whole Zoom is on and the discussion is there. The other thing that is there is Greg's slides.
Yeah, it's nice PowerPoint.
And, he basically goes through and he talks about the evolution of you kind of moving from selling thermostats to selling cybersecurity, and that was an interesting observation too. Is the products that are actually getting distributed by distributors are kind of amazing.
Well, I think what you're going to see, Ken, is and then Eric, you and I were at that KMC's presentation in Chicago, where a fellow who started out selling copy machines to the growth facilities winds up taking over the networks because he was a network expert. And the managed services are going to become more and more important as we get less and less products, and those products are sold by different entities. I remember when the Grangers first came out, how they scared distribution. Then you had Builder Square, Lowe's, and Home Depot, try the concept where you could come in, buy it, or select it, engineer it, size it up, whatever, and then find a contractor to put it in. And so we had different people try to do what distributors and HVAC do, and they had never forced the distributors out of the ability to be the interlocutors between vendors and the actual markets, because of the all the other things that Eric we always say. They provide the credit, the technical support, the generation to generation, going from 1000 series to 2000 series. That's a little bit more to it than just looking at the computer and get a cross-referenced suggested replacement. There's so I think the distributor will come, but you're right. He's absolutely right in many ways that our value is an evolving value, and the days of just being the inventory place, and then being able to support people during their 30, 60, 90-day payment periods, because projects are still, you don't get paid. And in this COVID-19 thing, it's even crazier, is that everybody's buying and doing stuff, but now getting paid is a real trick because they're not getting paid. So the distributor's role will always be probably, always evolving, but never really the hero like we used to be. I think distributors used to be the hero. They used to be regarded as the people that were the most dependable, reliable, knowledgeable people that could do it. Now it's going to be, I think one of the big things that affect us was just-in-time inventories. Everybody waits till the last minute, and then they finally get the budget, and then they want the stuff delivered tomorrow. Well, equipment doesn't get delivered tomorrow, and neither do controls. So I think that there's always going to be a role for distributors, but it's going to take a constant, measuring of the pulse, and see where you do a little bit of hedging now. Wouldn't you say, Eric, that in order to stay on top of stuff? And cybersecurity is a perfect one. The Totem Trusted comes out. It's an incredibly challenging proposal that used to be clearly the domain of IT, but now because they say anything IP, you got to protect it IT. There's all these clever things with Cybersecurity Month in October. We had a post the other day from Mark Peacock, but so it requires constant learning, and that requires people, investments, and training. And as Eric always points out, what did your cost of an employee, sales employee? What was your last measurement, Eric?
about a $500,000 by the time they're able
So
to be useful.
so when distributors are investing that much money, they've got to get paid too. So I think it's always been a challenge. And
Well, here's the deal, I think, too. And, from a vendor standpoint, Kenny, you bring up a great point. I mean, we are banks that don't charge interest. We offset risk for the manufacturers, but we also, the technical expertise, like you say, the cost to get somebody up to speed that can actually help, and then you have to insure them, the cost of health insurance, which ours goes up for our employees about 20 to 30% every year. It's our biggest cost. But to have, who's going to pay for that person? And, and I think, Ken, a little bit from what I think Greg was saying is, seems like that's an opportunity for the distributor to stay in and do that, because the manufacturers have distributors so they can gain leverage, right? They can multiply. Otherwise, they would just do it direct. And in some instances, things that don't require a lot of technology or are not expensive, like thermostats and so on and so forth, we've seen them already go to the Amazons of the world, right? You can buy that and it can show up on your doorstep. And what's interesting is I can buy a Nest thermostat from Amazon and then have my contractor come out, and guess what? He's going to charge me the same to install that as he probably would have if I just bought the thermostat from him. So, I think the misconception is that somehow you can get a better deal. And as long as there's smarts involved or support involved, then, you're going to pay for it one way or another. And yeah, if you could buy from a manufacturer direct, I guarantee you, Kenny, you know this as well as I do. You're one day past, they're calling you up and threatening to cut you off. So if you're, a contractor that wants to buy direct, maybe you could save a few percentage points by going direct, but then, how much is it costing you if you're having to pay on time when the product shipped versus, having a distributor that'll work with you and give you some terms. So I'm fond of saying I'm your friendly neighborhood banker here, right?
I think one of the points, or some of the points he made, is that you guys are in a very challenging business right now, and there's a lot of moving pieces. Integration becomes even, what basically the core of your business is, that you guys basically integrated a whole bunch of products and pulled together. You were the original integrators, I think, and then you had master systems integrators evolved out of your chain. Some of the other things he notes, the vendor landscape is changing. Control companies are acquiring each other. That's a big problem for you guys, because you're getting, all of a sudden somebody buys somebody, and now you had this line, and now you don't have that line. Anyway, then there's the control companies are acquiring equipment manufacturers. The line between products and controls is blurring. Service companies roll up, and standardizations, trying to see that. So it's, some new key players in the space. They're starting to see folks kind of rolling up in different models. Like Amazon, Walmart, potential services and distribution play. Honeywell focusing on cloud services, and OEMs branches thinning out. So it's just, there's just a lot of transformation going on in your industry, as everybody else's. Anyway, it's a really good session, and I think Greg does an amazing job of painting the picture, and he has one of his partners speaking as well. His name escapes me at the moment.
Greg's a super sharp guy. I encourage our community to check that out. And Kenny, I think we'll just maybe end this interview with our friend Ken Sinclair, automatedbuildings.com. The October issue is out, so check it out. With, Kenny, Ken Sinclair, I think a line from a book that Ken Smyers wrote, for our readers who don't know, he writes under pen names, he's a published author. What was the line from the book? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I think he started the book
Two
that
Cities,
way.
Charles Dickens, yep.
Yeah, and I think
I think you're right.
That kind of sums up, I think, where we're at right now. It's the best of times and the worst of times. So, all right, brother, with that, we'll let you go. My good friend Ken Sinclair, thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Good job, Ken. A lot of fun.
All right. Well, Ken, as always, man, love to hear what Ken Sinclair has to say, automatedbuildings.com. I love his idea about the curation. I think that's brilliant. I think it's spot on. And as always, Ken Sinclair is showing us the way. He's like the Peter Frampton, for our millennials who don't know, he used to sing a song, I want you to show me the way, right?
Yeah.
So I think Ken Sinclair is like our Peter Frampton, right?
Well, you know what? I saw Peter Frampton. So when you say that, that just shows our age. But yeah, Ken does a great job and very articulate. Very erudite. And he's a professor of sorts. And yeah, I think he's been a big boost to our industry, especially in these troubled times.
Yeah, no, love Ken Sinclair. Well, Kenny Smyers, listen, I know you need to get back at it. I need to get back at it. To our audience out there, man, stay safe. Hope you have a great week. We appreciate you tuning in. And this is Ken Sinclair. I mean, it's not Ken Sinclair. Well, Ken Sinclair, Ken Smyers, and Eric Stromko saying, remember, be bold, stay in control, and be relevant.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers. And that's right.
Trying to wake up from a dream is harder than it seems. Birds are flying